For my first film, Unexpected, I was the director of photography. I also did the colour grade, helped with the sound design, and created the title card. The first film was written by Gus Webb and followed the story of a character on a dinner date with an unknown person who begins to force the character to keep eating. It is revealed at the end that the person is actually a teddy monkey. To make it clear how I thought the film should look, I created mood boards for both the shots and the lighting. This gave the director, Bradley Davies, a good idea of what I had in mind. We agreed that we wanted lots of macro shots to make the audience feel uncomfortable and give a clear idea that something wasn't right. I wanted warm lighting in the film to make the audience feel themselves warm, giving them a false sense of security. This is the colour palette for the mood board I created. This is the colour palette for the final film. As you can see, both palettes are very similar. I was able to replicate my vision quite well. The macros made the audience feel uneasy along with the sound. When the viewing in the lecture hall took place, people were covering their eyes and ears. This is exactly what we were going for. The character is in an uncomfortable situation, so we wanted the audience to feel uncomfortable too. On this shoot I learnt a few things for the next one. It is vital to have a shot list. If you do not have one, then continuity becomes a real issue. Just having a script doesn't always work. I need to be careful which writers I work with because Gus was overprotective of his script. Although at points we knew that the script didn't make complete sense, he was adamant that it was fine and wouldn't change anything. For the opening shots I was heavily inspired by Wes Anderson. To do this, I set the scene in an orderly fashion and shot top down with a bird's eye view to make all the lines in the scene very straight. We did this to make it seem at first that the character's life is in order, but as the story goes on, fewer of the lines in the scene are straight. This leads up to the final scene where the shot is handheld to clearly reveal how unsteady their life is. In the main shot of the character, I opted for an uplight to replicate that of the candle. I got inspiration from the scene from The Shining. Both Stanley Kubrick and I used this to give the face of the character a more demonised and uneasy look. The whole conversation scene is shot low angle to make the character feel dominant and powerful. This is until the final shot, which is shot at eye level, showing that the audience is also on his level of mind, understanding what is going on. An issue we encountered was that one of the windows in the bedroom did not have a curtain, so it spilled light into the scene. To fix this, I added a mask in After Effects to darken that area of the scene. I also applied mask around his head in the final dolly shot to eliminate the spilled light onto the wall. When shooting on set, I ensured the floor was clear of hazards. I used gels on the lights to achieve the desired colour. I made sure that we only use these on LEDs because they do not get hot. For The Promise, I was again the director of photography. The film, written by Django Watkins, who is also the director, was about a man with OCD who manages to overcome part of his disorder after receiving a voicemail from his girlfriend. To ensure I was completely prepared for the shoot, I created a full and thorough shot list, so that not a single shot was missed and that the film made sense. Unfortunately, this wasn't much help in the end because after we wrapped and reviewed the footage, we realised that most of it wasn't usable. Although we realised on the day that the actor wasn't good at acting, it became even more apparent upon review. Trying to make do with what we had, Django rewrote the script slightly to cut out the bad acting parts as much as possible. Despite this, we still didn't have enough to work with and we were forced to reshoot and attempt to perfect the worst parts. In the original script and shoot, we had a long phone conversation rather than just a voicemail. Unfortunately, this was the worst part for our actor. We initially had two actors and it would have been a back and forth conversation scene. I put a lot of thought into the shot, as she would have been the one in power during this conversation. I shot with a slight low angle to show this. I used warm lighting on her shots and cool lighting on all of Owen's shots in contrast to how they're feeling. Finally, I opted to use a Pro Mist filter on Tina's shots to make it feel faded as if she is fading away from Owen. Unfortunately for me on this shoot, I did feel the director was taking away a lot of my creative control. There were a lot of cases where I wanted to do a shot in a certain way, but he kept insisting to do it in his way. Right from the go, we were inspired from this scene from The Aviator. Django used this as a canvas for the narrative. On set, health and safety was the top of the list of priorities because we were dealing with hot lights. I used sandbags to make sure they didn't fall over and followed Barry's 5 lighting and tripod tips from the workshop that everyone stayed safe. Originally, the majority of the film would have been in triptychs. Because the acting didn't go to plan, we changed this in the rewrites. We opted for triptychs because the story was going to be based on the fact that the OCD character Owen does everything in threes. Although we removed a lot of that, we wanted to keep the theme for the sun. In this scene I opted for a close-up and then 2 shots later we see an establishing. This is a subtle clue that something is off and not right. In the initial shoot for this scene, I lit it using an LED panel placed on top of the mirror to simulate a look like this. Unfortunately, the same light wasn't available on the day for our reshoot, so I had to replicate it. To do this, I had an RE1K shooting up at the ceiling and a silver reflecting bouncing the light back onto his face. In this scene, I shot slightly high angle to show that he is weak and powerless as his girlfriend breaks up with him over voicemail. I used a take on 3-point lighting to light his face. I had an 2K RE blonde coming from this direction as the key. 2 LED spots coming from this direction as a backlight, and an RE1K bouncing off the wall from this direction as the fill. So that I could further develop my style, I was again the DP for the Broken film. For this film, I was with the director who wanted to do a horror film. This put me out of my comfort zone because 1, horror films have never been something I saw myself making. 2, because for number 1, I had never researched how to shoot a horror film, and 3, I never really enjoyed the idea of making a horror film. Despite all of this, I thought it would be a good challenge for myself, so I threw myself in. The film was about a character who experienced a series of weird occurrences, and then scared, breaks a clock. They then wake up thinking it's a dream, but the camera then shows that the clock is still broken. Was it a dream? Was it not? To prepare for my role, I again created a thorough shot list detailing everything from lighting and sound to shot type and duration. I learned from the promise sheet that the more detailed this is, the better. For the lighting in this scene, I was inspired by this scene from the Blade Runner. Roger Deakins uses purple to completely shift the mood of this scene from the normal orange colour palette. I did the same. The first scene is colour accurate for the lighting. As the extraterrestrial activity starts happening, unusual colours come into play, like the blue from the clock and record player. When she then enters the room, the main light source is the purple light and haze in the room to make it feel subtly dreamy. The light is used to intensify that of the bedside light. I want to achieve low-key soft light, and I feel I achieved this. When shooting, I managed to shoot everything on time and very organised. Both the director and I knew what we wanted, and the shot list helped it move everything smoothly. Considering I was out of my comfort zone for this genre and style, I'm happy with how most of the shots came out. The final edit was also ungraded on a fairly flat profile picture, Cine 4 on the Sony A7S. Grading is something I feel competent doing, but I couldn't get hold of the edit before submission. I also feel that despite being told emotions are intensified on camera, the director was forcing our actor to overact. The kitchen scene here I feel is over the top and the squinting is too much. I used a Steadicam for this shot to get a smooth dolly in and continue the dolly so that the camera matches the movement of her leaning back. Unfortunately, the shot didn't come out as smooth as I thought it did. If warp stabilizer is added next time, this could solve the issue without looking too artificial. This is also a slight high angle shot to show that she is scared and vulnerable. In this series of shots I used a 58mm 1.8 Helios lens to isolate the subjects in frame and add clean bokeh to the background. This scene was all shot using a Steadicam. Movement is intentionally slightly unstable to represent the fear of the character. The only shot which is completely stable is the shot of the clock being knocked over off the table. I did this so that the audience can see clearly as possible what is happening. This means that the final shot of the clock being revealed makes sense. I lit the scene using 3 LED lights with warm gels by the window to simulate morning light as we shot this at night. For our final film, Inverted, I wanted to try out a different role. I chose to be first AC so that I was still in the camera department, but I could see how other DPs worked. Although I was technically first AC, I did the roles of second AC in Grip too. Our story was about a character who goes through their morning routine, but everything they touch suddenly turns upside down. The payoff is that they lay in their bed and their mattress flips on top of them. Our story was inspired by the comedy short style of Vines, more specifically Zach King, who does editing style magic tricks. We want to have this style of editing so when it came to the flipping of our objects. We ran into a few issues on set. We didn't have the base plate for the tripod, then finally we didn't have the Steadicam we hoped to use for some of the shots. Then I, as Grip, used a magic arm to attach a new quick release to the tripod which we had a compatible base plate for. The final issue of no Steadicam was solved because Theodore did the shot handheld and it came out fine. On set there are quite a few of us, so the majority of things ran very smoothly. We had a person for each role and enough hands to help fetch the equipment and set up scenes. Now that I had the opportunity to do a less intense role, I have learnt that on set I have too many creative ideas to not have a creative role. Although I was just AC and Grip, I kept wanting to give my input on how to shoot something. Sometimes this is welcome with opening arms, but other times I understand I should have left the DP to do it their way. The crash zoom here is inspired by Edgar Wright and used to focus the audience's eye on the subject. As we were going for a slight comedy, our editor made the decision to add a cartoon-like smoke in After Effects. This went against what the director Seb wanted. The smoke was used to make the cuts less noticeable because they weren't perfectly framed the same. Again, because we were going for a comedy, this action here is an intertextual reference to John Travolta in Pulp Fiction. For the final scene, we decided to shoot it in the bedroom because it was quite small with a foam board on the wall. This helped because it vastly improved the acoustics of the room when recording sound. This is because it dampens the echoes and requires less sound post-processing. I was also able to focus on the health and safety of the shoot. We're filming in quite confined spaces each time. I placed all kit bags in separate rooms so that the floors were clear, ran the wires along the edge of the room so that there were no trip hazards, and ensured that no one was lifting heavy equipment alone, all in line with the risk assessment.